The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 111. Silas's toad-like face was cold and arrogant, and there was a condescending look in his eyes. Rain was stunned. She gaped at Silas, aware that he was Shelby's father. Rain knew little about this man known as the weirdo of Bayville University, whose name made it seem like he and his son were brothers. However, she did know that he had a poor character. However, she never expected that he would expel her. Why? After a long while, she collected herself and asked through gritted teeth. Why? Silas snickered. You should know yourself what you did. What did I do? Rain demanded indignantly. You colluded with gangsters to beat and intimidate our students. Now the school has decided to expel you for your vile behavior. Do you have anything to say for yourself? When Silas thought of his son's miserable state, he longed to slap Rain in the face. The thought of being expelled after having endured Shelby and the others' wickedness aggrieved Rain. This is outright bullying. You pulled strings with Zenith Corporation to sabotage my internship, and Shelby and the others tried to rip me off too. This is just too much. Do you have proof? Silas smiled contemptuously. Shelby's girlfriend Nyla Wayne said it herself. Rain seethed. When did I say that, Rain? How awful of you, making up lies about me behind my back. Nyla strutted into the room, her face caked with rouge to conceal her bruises and her eyes blazing with hatred. Didn't you say it yourself at Neptune's Cove karaoke yesterday? Rain asked angrily. I can't believe you still have the nerve to bring that up. I lied because I was forced to protect myself, you cruel bitch, Nyla lashed out at Rain. Before Rain could retaliate, Shelby and the other students marched in with furious expressions, and she instinctively backed away in fear. At the sight of Rain, the students were reminded of how they had lost a year's worth of money in one night. This led them to forget that they had been mercifully spared. On the contrary, they simmered with resentment. Rain Frost, you're no longer a student of Bayville University. Sneering, Silas rose to his feet and left the room. Shelby and the others whirled on Rain. You've got some nerve getting those gangsters to attack us yesterday. You're going to pay now, bitch. Stay away from me! As they closed in, Rain backed away in fear and grabbed a pen holder from the desk to defend herself. You're still trying to threaten us? Die. At Shelby's roar, the other students charged at Rain like tigers emerging from their cages. Rain was just a young lady. She had lived like a church mouse with Margaret all these years for fear of exposing their identity. She had gotten used to lying low so she could only quake and freeze up in the face of a raging horde. Smack. Nyla was the first to rush forward and slapped Rain across the face. Ah, Rain cried out, but the pain brought her to her senses. You're going down with me. She raised the pen holder and cracked it against Nyla's head. Caught off guard by Rain's resistance, Nyla took the blow right on her forehead. Blood sprayed, and she collapsed wide-eyed onto the floor. The other students froze. Still in shock, Rain instinctively made a break for the door. Don't let her escape, Shelby shouted, and the others immediately gave chase. Rain had taken several hits, and her clothes were torn. Still, she did not stop as she sprinted out of the building, her body and face smeared with blood. Call the police. Catch that bitch, Shelby hollered after her. She only ran faster toward the school gates. Meanwhile, a delivery driver had been keeping watch on the school grounds. When he saw Rain running out of the building, he pressed a button on his walkie-talkie. Target 1 sighted. He revved the engine and sped after Rain. Kieran happened to be entering Bayville University. Because he was driving a limited edition Ferrari, the security guards assumed he was a rich young heir whom they could not afford to offend, so they let him through the gates without a second thought. Just then, he spotted Rain dashing out of a building in the distance, her hair and clothes disheveled. His face instantly clouded over, and anger boiled up inside him. Anyone who laid a hand on Rain would die. He slammed his foot down on the gas and accelerated in Rain's direction. At the same time, he noticed a van behind her accelerating and hurtling toward her in a peculiar manner. A rush of dread formed in his stomach, and he started honking the car horn furiously. The pedestrians on both sides of the road jumped out of the way in alarm. A rich young heir could easily run them over with his sports car without having to bear the consequences, and they had no intention of risking their lives. Rain glanced in the direction of the blaring car horn, and catching a glimpse of Kieran, she raced toward him. Kieran kept his eyes trained on the van. It picked up speed when the people dispersed, which convinced Kieran further that the driver was targeting Rain. As he stepped fiercely on the accelerator, he swiftly unbuckled his seatbelt. When the van was less than 10 meters away from Rain, Kieran was still more than 20 meters away. He rammed his foot all the way down on the accelerator and then, taking advantage of the vehicle's inertia, leaped forward with all his strength and shot toward Rain like a flying arrow. Rain was dumbstruck to see Kieran and the sports car moving at almost the same speed. Just as she was panicking, Kieran grabbed her from his position in the air, and the momentum sent both of them rolling toward the right side of the road. Rain felt as if her body was sailing through the air, and then a deafening crash sounded behind her. "Ah!" she screamed in terror. Bam! Both Kieran and Rain crashed heavily to the ground. Kieran used his body to shield Rain from the impact. "Kieran, are you okay?" Rain cried anxiously. At that moment, Kieran glimpsed a flash of light in his peripheral vision. Alarmed, he flipped over, abruptly, and pinned Rain under him. Whoosh! A bullet whizzed past the back of Kieran's head. He scrambled to his feet and pulled Rain behind a nearby tree. "Don't come out!" Trembling, Rain nodded dully. Kieran straightened up haughtily, staring at the driver who had jumped out of the van and watching the sniper from the corner of his eye. "You want to die, huh?" Bang! That was the sound of a bullet piercing his head. The driver's eyes widened, and he tried to look over his shoulder to see why he'd been shot. When he had been shouting just now, he suddenly felt a force push him a few centimeters to the left, and then he was shot. However, he would never understand why, nor would he realize that Kieran had made him take the bullet in his place. Kieran retracted his raised hand, put his feet on the ground, and sprinted toward the sniper. Chapter 112. Bang! A bullet bounced off the spot where Kieran's feet had just been. A silver needle flew from his fingers and deflected the bullet. Bang! Bang! 2 more shots zipped past his head. He hurled out 2 more needles, and with a tinkling sound, both needles and bullets dropped to the ground at the same time. Braving the shower of bullets, he streaked for one of the campus's high-rise buildings like a tiger out of its cage. At the top of the building, the sniper's eyes were blazing with icy rage. He was startled and infuriated that Kieran had managed to survive those consecutive shots. He pulled the bolt handle, reloaded his rifle, and prepared to fire the last shot, but Kieran had already entered the building and charged up the stairs. A sense of foreboding settled in the sniper's stomach. If Kieran came upstairs, he would be cornered here. With that in mind, he stood up hastily and prepared to pack up his rifle and escape. Bang! All of a sudden, the sound of a bullet penetrating his head rang out. A stream of bright red blood appeared before his eyes, and a burning pain engulfed his brain. The bullet pierced the center of his forehead, and the inertia drove his body to fall on its back. Zenith's bodyguard watched from the rooftop of another building with a sneer. "Mr. Zenith thought out his plan really well, but I bet the sniper didn't see my trap coming. Mr. Zenith will definitely praise me for silencing him. Kieran York, consider yourself lucky." After hissing bitterly, he quickly packed up his belongings and got ready to leave. "You laid a commendable trap." A woman's mocking voice sounded from behind him. The bodyguard froze, then wheeled around warily toward the sound. Serena was there, dressed in a black leather jacket and leather trousers, beaming at him. Despite the peril at hand, the bodyguard could not help his heart from fluttering, so mesmerized by her beautiful face, charming smile, and bewitching eyes. However, he soon came to his senses and raised his rifle to fire at her. "Damn-y!" Before he could finish, he caught a glimpse of a puff of smoke, and then his body toppled backward limply. "Foolish man!" Taking out a sack, Serena loaded both the bodyguard and rifle into it and disappeared from the rooftop in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Kieran arrived at the top of the other building and found that the sniper had been killed by a bullet to the head. His sharp, callous eyes scanned his surroundings but found nothing. In the end, he went back downstairs somewhat regretfully. The police had arrived and surrounded the scene where the driver had been sniped. When Kieran returned, Rain was still quivering behind the tree. With an aching heart, he walked over to her and scooped her into his arms. Stricken with fright, Rain clung to Kieran's neck with both arms. She did not say a word, but she could feel her heart beating violently as if it was about to jump out of her chest. "Who did this to you?" Kieran asked softly. suppressing his anger at the sight of her disheveled clothes and cuts on her face and head. Afraid that Kieran would seek revenge right away and be arrested by the police at the scene, Rain shook her head. I tripped and fell. Kieran's expression was glacial. He was already plotting murder for the people who had inflicted all this agony on Rain. Without a word, he walked toward the police with Rain in his arms. The police were investigating the victim, collecting evidence and looking up the van's license plate number at the same time. Their gazes shifted to Kieran as he approached them. The driver of this van tried to hit Rain. Out of desperation, I let my car collide with his van and caused an accident. The sniper who killed the driver was killed on the rooftop of that building. The police were taken aback. They wanted to probe Kieran for more information, but he ignored them. Was it Shelby Stone or his dad? Kieran glanced at Rain in his arms. Kieran, I told you I tripped and fell. If you don't tell the truth, it means you don't trust me. I don't like women who don't trust me, Kieran said coldly. Rain was immediately perturbed. In the end, she could no longer stop herself from clinging to Kieran and sobbing. Silas Stone expelled me. Shelby and the others accused me of colluding with gangsters to beat them up and wanted to take revenge on me. Rain's trembling body in Kieran's arms inflamed the fiery anger in his heart. The rage within him erupted like a volcano, and an unbridled thirst for blood swallowed him up. Meanwhile, Silas had just been informed of the sniper attack on campus. While he knew Zenith intended to kill Kieran, he had not expected the use of a sniper, so he was panicking as he hurried to the scene of the incident. Shelby and the others had also heard about the attack. Wondering who the target was, they arrived excitedly at the scene to watch the fun. Shelby walked ahead of the group, supporting a feeble Nyla. He said to the others, I hope Kieran York's the one who got sniped. If he's dead, I'll whip his corpse. Nyla's tone was dripping with hatred. At this moment, the other students caught sight of Kieran approaching with Rain, and they immediately shut up, their faces pale with nervousness and terror. Why aren't you guys talking? Shelby's attention was on Nyla all the time, and he asked when he did not get a response. Run! Someone shrieked and turned to flee. Shelby was startled. Have you gone crazy? Run if you want to die! Kieran's murderous voice boomed like thunder. At the sound of Kieran's voice, Shelby jumped as if he had been bitten by a snake. He released Nyla and bolted. A shadowy figure materialized in his vision. A bolt of excruciating pain in his abdomen followed, and his body was tossed into the air. Ah! Shelby screamed in midair. Ah! Recognizing Kieran, Nyla screeched as if she had seen a ghost. Smack! Kieran stormed up to her, struck her twice across the face, and landed a kick on her body. You said something about whipping my corpse, bitch. Nyla's body flew backward like a ball. Now she looked like a battered corpse herself. Thud! Whomp! She and Shelby hit the ground at the same time, letting out shrill screams. The other students shook like leaves as they peered at Kieran, too terrified to say a word. Remembering how Onyx and his lackeys had knelt to Kieran in Neptune's Cove karaoke, a few of them sank heavily to their knees, their faces deathly white. Some even started knocking their heads on the ground, beseeching, please let us go. We were wrong. We promise we'll never do it again. Silas arrived just in time to see his son howling on the ground while the others begged for mercy on their knees. He shuddered, but fury welled up in him too. He was the vice principal of this school, and this was his son. He bellowed, Who are you? Your grandpa, Kieran proclaimed arrogantly. The next instant, he moved. Chapter 113. Silas felt a gust of wind sweep him up. Severe pain exploded in his jaw, and his body arced into the air. He could see the blood spraying from his mouth. It formed a striking rainbow-like red arc in the sunlight, though it was, unfortunately, not an actual rainbow. Silas let out a blood-curdling shriek. Bam! His body crashed heavily to the ground. He writhed weakly in an attempt to get up, but failed. Some of the students kneeling on the ground were so frightened that they wet themselves. This... absolutely horrifying. Rain nestled in Kieran's arms, feeling his heart thundering in his chest. She felt like a coddled baby, safe and warm and happy in his embrace. Kieran was livid. If he had not arrived in time, Rain would have been hit by the van or killed by the sniper. She was just a girl, a senior college student who had never done anything hateful to anyone. They were monsters for wanting to kill her. When he saw the scars all over her face and body, he surmised straight away that Silas and the others were behind them. So he beat them up without hesitation upon encountering them. "Well, who the hell are you?" Silas stuttered. "Dad, that's Kieran York." Shelby clutched his wounded stomach, his face contorted with pain. Silas instantly recalled that Zenith's son had been killed by a man named Kieran York. A chill ran down his spine, and his eyes widened with terror. However, they were on school grounds, and Kieran could not possibly commit murder in public, so he dared himself to glare at Kieran defiantly. "You're breaking the law right under the police's noses. I'll have them arrest you right away." The thought of a potential arrest made Rain shudder, and she opened her mouth to persuade Kieran. Kieran curled his lip at Silas. "Arrest me?" "That's right," Silas roared. A perfect smile graced Kieran's lips. "You know Zenith Fableman, right?" "Well, what do you mean?" A hint of fear flickered across Silas's face. "His son harbored evil intentions toward my sister, and now—" He did not finish, but Silas knew the answer. Was Kieran going to kill them? His body went cold. You want to kill us?" On the ground, Shelby stared up at Kieran apprehensively as well. Kieran's smile grew wider. "I think Barry Fableman must be very lonely in the afterlife. I'm sure he'd be happy if he had companions, don't you think?" He cast a significant look at Silas. Silas almost swooned with fright. Despite being backed by the Ziegler family, Zenith was forced to keep his head low even though his son had been killed. The best he could do was plot his revenge in secret. It would be unwise to challenge Kieran York head-on. Kieran had become a fearsome figure in Silas's eyes. Kieran glanced at Shelby. "I remember telling you yesterday that I don't want to see your dad in the vice principal's office from today onwards. Have you forgotten what I said?" Shelby directed a terrified look at his father, his face as white as paper. Of course, he had not forgotten. He had even delivered the message to his father yesterday. Although Silas was furious at first, his fury transformed into alarm when he learned that Onyx and his lackeys had knelt to Kieran, and he agreed to resign. It was Zenith's phone call that prompted him to seek vengeance today. Now, Silas regarded Kieran in dismay. "I've never done anything to you. Why do you have to drive me into a corner?" "Never?" Kieran sneered and patted Rain on the shoulder. "This is my sister, the person I treasure more than my life." Silas immediately blanched. Kieran glared at Shelby on the ground. "Have you asked your son what he did?" Silas was at a loss for a reply. He remained silent. Without warning, Kieran stepped forward and brought his foot down on Shelby. Crack! With a sickening snap, Shelby's right ankle broke into two pieces. "Arrgh!" An agonizing scream erupted from Shelby. Silas swore loudly and scrambled to get up. "On your knees!" Kieran boomed. Silas felt as if there was a mountain weighing down on his shoulders, forcing his knees to give out and sink to the ground before Kieran. "How did your son break his foot?" Kieran threw a look of contempt at the wailing Shelby and asked Silas. "He fell," Silas stammered bitterly. "Who can prove that?" Kieran continued. Silas turned his imploring gaze on the other students. "They can." The students' faces were ashen, and they gawked in silence at Kieran, as if he were a god of death. Kieran's eyes slid to them. "That doesn't seem to be the case." Silas opened his mouth. There was another loud crack of bones. "Fuck!" Shelby howled and passed out. The veins on Silas's forehead bulged. He frantically whirled around and knelt to the students. "Please, help me prove that my son's foot was broken in a fall." Thud. 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 He started knocking his head on the ground. At this moment, he no longer cared about his status as Bayville University's vice principal. To protect the lives of his son and himself, he had to bow and scrape. The students were even more petrified. Kieran was truly vicious and ruthless. "He fell," Nyla managed feebly. "He fell!" The rest of the students shouted at the top of their lungs, immediately feeling spent afterward. Silas exhaled and slumped onto the ground, relieved that his son's life was saved. He did not doubt that if this continued, his son would become the next Barry. This man before him was the biggest menace he had ever seen. As a grown-up, he should really watch his step, Kieran mocked Shelby. His gaze flickered to Silas. "Seems that your son's paying for all the awful things you did." Silas's mind went blank as he understood at once what Kieran meant. "I'll resign this instant." Too late," Kieran interrupted him, glancing toward the police cars. Silas felt all the strength leave his body like a balloon drained of air. Now, it was no longer just a matter of him resigning. It was also a matter of facing punishment. He looked at Kieran pleadingly. "Please, spare my son's life. I'll turn myself in this instant." Kieran did not speak. "Please." Thud, thud, thud. Silas got onto his knees and kowtowed profusely to Kieran again. The students stared at Kieran like he was Hades himself. "There won't be a next time." Bam! Kieran swung his foot and sent Silas flying to the fleet of police cars. Silas screamed as he sailed through the air. The kneeling students prostrated to him at once. "We'll never do it again. Get lost." His bellow was the cue for them to flee like spooked rabbits. With Rain in his arms, Kieran strode to the gates with his head held high. There was only one thought raging in his mind: anyone who touches my family dies. Screech. With tires squealing, a gorgeous woman pulled up next to him in a sleek car. Chapter 114. The car window rolled down and Serena's beautiful face came into view. "Hop in, Mr. Kieran." She flashed him a charming, inviting smile. Kieran was surprised by Serena's sudden appearance. Could she be the one behind the sniper's death? Despite his suspicion, he kept himself from asking. Nodding, he opened the car door and laid Rain down on the rear seat. Then, he got into the car and gathered her into his arms like a child, his eyes brimming with concern. Serena glanced at them furtively through the rearview mirror. She smiled wordlessly, started the car, and drove out of Bayville University. 10 minutes later, they pulled up outside Bayville Hotel. Kieran was even more mystified by Serena when he realized they were at a hotel. She seemed like a careless woman, but she was actually the opposite. She had brought them to a hotel because she knew Rain's family would be worried if she returned home in such a state. Nevertheless, he accepted her goodwill readily. Carrying Rain, he got out of the car and headed inside. Serena left to park her car. Kieran approached the front desk. "I need a room." The receptionist took in Rain's tattered clothes and wounds in astonishment. Was this man crazy? He should bring the girl to the hospital, not a hotel for some hanky-panky. The receptionist felt a chill run down her spine. What a perv. "Sir, would you like a double or a twin bedroom?" "Double," Kieran answered without a second thought. The receptionist was even more certain that Kieran was a pervert and was full of sympathy for Rain. Rain buried her head in Kieran's chest, her face hot with embarrassment. Was he really going to? "That will be $688 for the room and $1,000 for the deposit, which brings the total to $1,688. Would you like to pay by card or QR code?" Kieran reached into his pocket, only to remember that he had given one of the stacks of cash from Snow to the security guard and left the other in the car that had been wrecked in the crash just now. He glanced at Rain. "Did you bring your card?" The receptionist could not help rolling her eyes. What a scumbag. He wants to sleep with her, but he can't even pay for a room. Rain shook her head at Kieran's question. "No, I spent all $100,000 this month, so I didn't bring it with me." Kieran was frustrated. The $1 billion check and Onyx's bank card had all been confiscated by Snow. That woman was really using concrete action to prove that she loved Kieran's money. Just then, Serena came up behind him. "Are you done booking? You're just in time. Help me pay for the room. It's $1,688, said Kieran. Serena nodded, took out her mobile phone, scanned the QR code, and made the payment swiftly. The receptionist was dumbfounded. What was going on? Was he going to take on 2 women by himself? Could he do it? In the next second, her eyes grew as big as saucers. Was he a kept man? Did he make a living from sleeping around? Was he a gigolo? She instantly formed the impression that Kieran was a gigolo, which reinforced her disdain for him. However, she could not help admiring Kieran's good looks and thinking to herself, how much does it cost for 1 session? Should I try it sometime? She was so distracted that she ended up giving Serena the key card without asking for her identity documents for registration. The 3 of them went upstairs to the room. Kieran laid Rain on the bed, his heart aching at the sight of the wounds peppering her body. He reached out to undress and prepare her for treatment. Rain caught his hand hastily. Kieran, She gazed at him pitifully, then at Serena next to him. Chapter 115. Kieran understood right away. Wait outside for a bit. That's so unfair, Mr. Kieran. How could you treat me like this after I paid for your room? Serena complained. Fine. Go ahead and treat her wounds. I'm going to use the bathroom. I can't see anything from inside anyway. She flung down her purse and glided to the bathroom, swaying her hips. Kieran decided against driving her out and turned to Rain. I'm going to treat your wounds now. I'm your brother, so just relax. Rain's heart was in turmoil. How could she relax when Serena was right in the bathroom? However, she swallowed her nervousness and started taking off her clothes. Kieran's gaze raked over the bruises on Rain's delicate body, his eyes glowing with hatred and anger. Those people deserved to die. He would spare them for now. Next time, he would make them pay. He began cleaning Rain's wounds attentively. Although he was careful, Rain was still tense because of Serena's presence. She tried her best to control her agitation, but she could not help moaning quietly from the pain in her wounds. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Serena pressed herself against the wall close to the bedroom, a beguiling smile on her lips. She entered her WhatsApp conversation with Snow, then tapped and held down the record button for voice messages. Rain's occasional whines were recorded and delivered to Snow. What would she associate those sounds with? Serena was gleeful, especially when she heard Kieran ask, "Does it hurt?" "No." "Relax. Just a bit more, and it'll be over." "I'm okay. Just do what you have to do." Their conversation was clearly transmitted to Snow through WhatsApp. Serena covered her mouth to keep herself from laughing out loud. She wondered what Snow's reaction would be when she heard it. "It's over," said Kieran. So fast. Yeah, there was no response from Rain. Serena's imagination was already roaming as she listened to their exchange. She was sure it would be even worse for Snow. She was already itching to watch the drama unfold. "Don't wear your clothes," said Kieran. "But I'll buy new ones for you later." Rain did not reply. Fift. Serena could no longer hold her laughter in. This would definitely make Snow lose her mind. Alerted by her chortles, Kieran walked over to the bathroom and knocked on the door. "Serena, what are you laughing at?" "I was watching a funny video. Are you done?" Serena struggled to subdue her mirth. "Yeah. You can come out now." Kieran retraced his steps and tucked Rain in bed. Serena saw Rain lying in bed, her face as red as a tomato. Her wounds were no longer visible, as if they had magically disappeared. If she did not know Kieran had been treating her injuries, she would have thought they had been doing something naughty in bed. "Come with me. We're going shopping for Rain's clothes," Kieran said to Serena. "You want me to pay, don't you?" She chuckled. Kieran nodded. He did not have a single cent on him at the moment. "Let's go." Without demur, Serena linked her arm through Kieran's as if they were a couple. Since Kieran had asked her for help, he did not pull away. He looked at Rain lying in bed. "Get some rest. I'll be back soon." Rain felt slightly uncomfortable to see them so intimate, but she nodded obediently. Kieran and Serena took the elevator downstairs. "You finished so fast, Mr. Kieran," Serena remarked, beaming. Before Kieran could speak, the receptionist blurted out, "Is he a minute man?" Both Serena and Kieran were stunned. The next second, "Ha ha ha." Serena doubled up with laughter. "Yes, he is." Kieran's face clouded over. "Have all the women in the city gone mad? Were all of them this bold?" Chapter 116. "Minute man, huh?" Serena teased while driving. "I will throttle you if you say that again." Next to her in the passenger seat, Kieran said icily, "You wouldn't throttle a beautiful woman, would you?" Serena smiled, then added, "Or you could prove that you're not a minute man." "I could be, but it'd be none of your business." Naturally, Kieran understood what she meant. "So petty," Serena muttered unhappily. "You'd better control yourself. Don't let me discover the skeletons in your closet or else." Kieran did not finish, but there was a warning look in his eyes. "Or else what? You'll kill me and then rape me? Or will it be the other way round?" Serena asked without any ounce of shame. "Why did you poison that book in Schuyler Library?" This woman was simply cuckoo. If he did not get to the point, she would drive him mad. "Because I missed you," Serena winked at him. Kieran scoffed. "You think I'd believe that? I want to go out with you, but you don't feel the same way, so I had to resort to drastic measures." Serena answered evenly. Her attitude baffled Kieran. "Don't look at me like that. If you want to know the answer, meet me at Schuyler Library at 9 o'clock tonight," Serena continued playfully. Kieran stared at her for several seconds, but did not sense the slightest hint of danger. This woman was like a thorny rose. If she wanted to attack someone, she would naturally emanate a sinister aura. However, he did not detect anything, which meant she was not harboring any malicious intention toward him. Kieran put his thoughts away in the back of his mind. "I'll be there. Should I wear the lingerie from last night? What do you think?" Serena's face instantly lit up with delight. Kieran almost choked. "Stop being ridiculous." "What do you mean, ridiculous?" "This is a bold confession of love. As long as you don't sleep with Snow, I have the right to pursue you." Serena continued proudly. "Besides, I'm a virgin through and through." She burst out giggling. "Why am I explaining this to you? Given your medical skills, I bet you can tell at one glance if I'm a virgin or not." Kieran gazed out the window. "I don't care who you are, but if you try anything funny with Snow or meddle in my revenge, I will not show any mercy. If I help you, will you get into bed with me?" Serena beamed at Kieran. "Perv." Kieran roared internally. "You're such a petty man," Serena muttered when Kieran did not reply. "After shopping for Rain's clothes, how about we go for a ride together?" "I don't have time. I need to get back to the office," Kieran rejected without hesitation. I wonder how the sniper died." Serena pretended to think out loud. "You killed him?" Kieran quickly asked. "About that ride." Serena smiled. Kieran looked at her, wondering how many secrets she was keeping. "Fine. You're the best, Mr. Kieran." Serena broke into a grin. However, she was too beguiling. Kieran believed that if he did not guard himself against this woman, he might end up being devoured, bones and all. They arrived at a mall, bought some clothes and underwear, and returned to the hotel. Serena had picked out the underwear. Remembering yesterday's photos, Kieran was scared she would try to seduce him if they made the selection together, so he left her to it. They returned to the room and placed the clothes on the bed. Serena looked at Rain. "Your brother picked out all these clothes for you. He put a lot of thought into it." Rain blushed, flustered by the thought that Kieran had chosen underwear for her. Did he already know her size after treating her wounds just now? Since it would be inappropriate for Kieran to stay in the room, and because he wanted to get information on the sniper incident. He bid goodbye to Rain, instructed her to rest until the night before going home, and then left with Seer. Rain's skin was already crawling with the discomfort of being naked, so she hastily opened the bag to get dressed. However, she was flabbergasted when she saw the underwear. It was, to put it simply, not for normal people. Serena said Kieran had picked it out. Was Kieran into stuff like this? Rain blushed so hard she looked like she was about to explode. Eventually, she suppressed her shyness and tried it on, but one glance in the mirror was enough to make her sink through the floor. It was just too embarrassing. "Kieran has some strange preferences," Rain murmured inwardly, but she still put it on. She was willing to do anything he liked. In fact, she was already considering buying more underwear like this in the future. Kieran was totally unaware of this. If he did, he would definitely strangle Serena. She had portrayed him not only as a Minuteman, but also as a pervert. Serena started the car and drove straight to the outskirts. Realizing that they were going off the beaten track, Kieran frowned in confusion. "Scared?" Serena gave him a sidelong smile. "This woman here isn't scared, so why should you be?" "You think I'd be scared?" Kieran snorted. "That's the Mr. Kieran I know. I feel so safe when I'm with you." All of a sudden, Serena switched to a coquettish tone. It was so sickeningly sweet that it could numb someone down to their bones. Kieran turned away quickly, pretending not to have heard her. "Mr. Kieran, don't ignore me!" Serena whined. "Can we talk about the sniper now?" Kieran changed the subject. "Do you think I'm pretty?" Serena pressed on. Kieran shook his head. "No, I'm not going to tell you anything about the sniper." Huffing, Serena parked the car at the edge of the road. Kieran said threateningly, "Aren't you afraid Even if you raped me, I wouldn't bat an eye. In fact, I'd cooperate with you," Serena said smugly. Kieran was utterly defeated. He did not doubt she was capable of that. "What happened?" Kieran demanded coldly. "Why so anxious, Mr. Kieran?" Serena suddenly chuckled. "Don't you know anything about foreplay? Even if you want me, you can't be so impatient. You should give me time to adapt, you know." Kieran felt like he was close to having a mental breakdown. and his face hardened. "It takes nearly half a decade to assemble and raise troops to conquer a nation. You were gone for 20 years, and now you come back, declare war on the three big families, and you think you're already invincible?" Serena crooned. Kieran regarded the woman beside him in befuddlement. A man should know when to yield, just like when he's with a woman. "You can't always be all hard and rough, you know," Serena continued. Kieran touched a hand to his forehead. This woman never failed to insert vulgar undertones into everything she said. Screech! The car came to a stop next to a warehouse. Chapter 117. Kieran opened the door and got out of the car. Serena gazed after Kieran, an alluring smile playing on her lips. Although Kieran did not respond, she knew he had been listening, and that was enough. She opened the car door and got out as well. "Your man's in there, Mr. Kieran. Do you want me to go in with you?" Serena glanced at the warehouse. "No need." Kieran started for the door. "Mr. Kieran, how are you so sure this isn't a trap?" Serena called out sweetly, swaying back and forth on her feet. Kieran's heart thumped, but it was not because of fear. He found this woman enigmatic, but she harbored no malice toward him. More importantly, she harbored none toward Snow, or Snow would have died long ago. Why? Serena was like a mystery to him. He pushed open the warehouse door and saw a sack on the ground. Although he could not see what was inside, he could make out the shape of a human. Kieran walked over to the sack and opened it. He tipped it over and out tumbled an unconscious man. He could tell at a glance that he had fainted after being poisoned by Serena. However, his eyes were fixed on the rifle. He wasted no time in figuring it out. This was the person who had killed the sniper at Bayville University before getting caught by Serena. So, Serena had been following him and even knew some of the things he was thinking. What a scary woman. Collecting his thoughts, Kieran struck the sniper across the face. The latter let out a low cry and slowly opened his eyes. "Kieran York!" he exclaimed. As Zenith's bodyguard, he was no stranger to Kieran, and had seen how ruthless Kieran could be, so he could not help looking frightened. "You work for the three big families?" Kieran demanded coldly. The bodyguard shook his head instinctively. "I know who you work for." Kieran's voice resumed calmness. How did you know?" the bodyguard asked, puzzled. "Apart from the three big families, the person who hates me the most in Bayville is Zenith Fableman." The bodyguard's mind went blank. Apprehension and panic crept onto his face. "Come with me to Zenith Fableman's house," Kieran said coolly. The bodyguard was alarmed. "Aye, if you want a swift death, you'd better not refuse, or you'll be the next Barry Fableman." Kieran's expression was stony. Remembering Barry's tragic, limbless death, the bodyguard quaked and went limp as if all the energy had been drained from him. He slumped onto the floor, not even daring to pick up the rifle nearby. Kieran was just too terrifying and vicious. Gulping, he said, I'll go with you." Kieran turned on his heel and strode out of the warehouse. The bodyguard picked the rifle up from the floor and followed him, not daring to aim it at him. Kieran was like a wall that he could neither challenge nor overcome. Serena beamed happily when she saw Kieran re-emerge so soon. "As expected of my man." Kieran ignored her pointedly. "I knew you were a minute man." Hee. Serena's melodious laughter sounded like the tinkling of bells. Kieran. One day he was going to have a breakdown because of this madwoman. "Get in the car, get us back to the city, and then lend me the car." Kieran articulated his instructions clearly. "You want to take my car, Mr. Kieran?" Once again, Serena's question was infused with a smutty double entendre. Kieran turned away in annoyance, refusing to take the bait. "You'll feel really good, I promise," Serena went on. "Let's go." Kieran had no intention of entertaining her. "Go ahead." Serena headed for the passenger seat, allowing Kieran to drive. He got into the driver's seat. Serena rode shotgun, while the bodyguard climbed into the back seat meekly. Kieran drove them back to the city. Serena remained silent all the way, but from time to time, she peeked at the bodyguard in the back. Although he was holding a rifle, he did not consider fighting back for a second, which amplified Serena's admiration and awe for Kieran. Arriving in the city, Kieran pulled over to the curb. "You can get off now. I'll take him there." Serena smiled prettily at him as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "You're a pretty good driver, Mr. Kieran." "Nah, I'm just average," Kieran said humbly. "Then I guess it's because my car is comfortable." Serena twirled on her feet, oozing charm and drawing the attention of passers-by who stopped and stared. But she only had eyes for Kieran. Kieran drove off quickly to avoid being pestered by her. Half an hour later, Kieran arrived at Zenith's home following the bodyguard's instructions. The sorrowful atmosphere of a funeral lingered at the gates of the mansion. Kieran felt no sympathy. All he could feel was a thirst for blood. The bodyguard trailed after him like a doormat. Kieran's appearance was soon noticed by the other bodyguards of the Fableman family, and panic broke out across the scene. A shiver ran down his spine when Zenith heard that Kieran had shown up. It meant the assassination had failed, and Kieran was here to settle the score. He took several deep breaths to rein in his trepidation. Upon hearing that Kieran had come, Helena charged at him, her hair disheveled like a mad woman, screaming, "You're going down with me, murderer! Kill me if you dare!" "Helena!" Zenith tried to stop her. Helena shrieked. Blood trickled out of a small hole between her eyebrows. Thump! She toppled onto her back with her arms wide open. She was dead. Kieran killed her. "K. Kieran York, you killed my wife?" Zenith roared, his voice trembling. "Ha!" Kieran chuckled. "She called me a murderer and shouted for me to kill her. I couldn't ignore her wish, could I? You should thank me for helping her realize her dream." He sounded nonchalant and apathetic. You're a cruel bastard," Zenith said through gritted teeth. "Cruel? Smack?" Without warning, Kieran slapped him twice in the face. "Is this cruel enough?" "Ah!" Zenith covered his wounded cheek and glared at Kieran, his eyes blazing with fury. How could this man be so savage and insolent? "You think I'm cruel?" Kieran asked sarcastically. "Yes." Zenith fought to stifle his rage. Kieran swung around and jabbed a finger at the bodyguard. "If I hadn't arrived in time today, Rain would have been killed in that car crash and your sniper would have killed me. And you call me cruel?" "You..." Zenith was speechless. He had arranged all of that after all. "Call Alfred Ziegler and tell him to clean up this mess," Kieran ordered coldly. Chapter 118. Zenith Fableman looked at Kieran, and he could not figure out where he got his confidence from. Not to mention why the three major families had to endure it for a week. If they had not been patient for a week, would his son and wife have died? "Did you not hear what I said?" Kieran asked cheekily. "Kieran, don't go too far. The three major families are not as easy to deal with as you think. You'll die a miserable death if you continue to do this," Zenith warned angrily. Kieran smirked and looked up at the sky. 20 years ago, hundreds of people in the York family couldn't die peacefully. They couldn't even be buried in peace for 20 years. Do you still think I'm worried I can't die peacefully? Zenith's lips twitched. He was speechless. "Are you going to fight or not?" Kieran asked impatiently. Zenith shook his head. "No. Good." After he finished speaking, Kieran walked toward the coffin in the yard. Zenith looked at Kieran's silhouette in confusion. "What are you doing?" Kieran did not say a word. Instead, he approached the coffin and looked at Barry's body. The undertaker did a good job preparing the body. It seems like you put a lot of thought into making sure he leaves with dignity. Zenith's gaze was full of resentment. Barry was his only child and his everything. Now it was all gone. The heartbreaking thought of Kieran breaking his 4 limbs made him want to bite Kieran to death. "Has Mr. Alfred seen his grandson's body?" Kieran looked at Zenith and asked with a faint smile. Zenith had not told Alfred about this yet. He did try to call Fabian, but it did not go through. He was devastated that none of the Zieglers came for the funeral of his son. Even if they did not know Barry was dead, they should have come to visit him when he got seriously injured. He was outraged that none of them came in the end. "Zenith, do you know the reason why?" Kieran asked as if he had just read his mind. "Why?" Zenith asked furiously. "To the Zieglers, you are nothing more than a gopher. Especially your son, Barry. You're just a gopher who collects rent for Fabian, so what makes you think they'll take pity on your son?" Kieran sneered. "You." Zenith was humiliated and furious. Kieran said, "Do you know the fate of gophers?" "What is it?" Kieran pointed at the corpse in the coffin, and Helena's lifeless form. "It's death. Kieran, you're too cruel. They wouldn't have died if not for you," Zenith roared angrily. Kieran shook his head calmly. "I haven't finished speaking. You reacted too hastily." "What do you mean?" Do you know what happens to the enemies of the York family and those who offend me? Kieran's tone was grave. What? Zenith asked blankly. This! Kieran slapped his palm onto the glass coffin, and it made a crisp sound before shattering into countless pieces. Kieran, you... Zenith was stunned. Kieran did not say a thing. Instead, he pointed to Barry's body. Zenith glanced over and saw Barry's neatly preserved body break into pieces, turning into a pile of mud and flesh. Yuck! Zenith vomited from the disgusting scene. The others looked away too, as they could not bear to watch. Kieran, I'll fight you! Zenith rushed at Kieran like a mad dog. Bam! Kieran kicked Zenith in the lower abdomen, sending him flying like a ball. Kieran put his hands behind his back and stood proudly. I will avenge the deaths of the York family by making your lives a living hell. Ouch! Zenith fell to the ground with a shrill scream. Like the Grim Reaper, Kieran controlled life and death. Zenith looked at Kieran, his wife's body, and his son, who had turned into a pile of flesh. In despair, his humiliation and anger had reached its limit. Not only did his son die unfairly, his body was not even in one piece. Not only was this mortifying, it was a ghastly sight to behold. Broken-hearted, Zenith looked at Kieran and was instantly filled with grief and anger. Do you choose life or death? The choice is yours. Kieran's voice sounded again. Zenith could not help but tremble. Of course, he did not want to die. Then he directed his anger toward the heartless Ziegler family. So, he got up and dialed Alfred's number immediately. Soon after, the call got through, and Zenith put it on speaker. Uncle, you have to help me get revenge. On the other end of the phone, Alfred frowned. Zenith, what happened? Kieran killed Barry and Helena, and now he wants to kill me, Zenith cried. What? Alfred asked loudly. It's all because I helped Fabian collect rent. Zenith recounted the entire story while ranting about Fabian, hoping that Alfred would be able to help him out as an apology. However, he was let down. I won't let you offend Kieran. Do you understand? Alfred yelled angrily. Zenith felt a shiver down his spine. Alfred had abandoned him and refused to help him get revenge, so he was left absolutely hopeless. Uncle, it's already done. What do I do now? Deal with it yourself. Thud. Alfred hung up the phone. Zenith listened to the beeping sound as Alfred's last 4 words echoed in his ears. He did not know how to deal with it at all. He was desperate and at a loss. He had always been unhappy with the Ziegler family, but he still held on to a sliver of hope that they would be able to help him. They were their niece and grandson, after all. However, the reality was much crueler. The Ziegler family did not care about their life and death anymore. Zenith felt like a dog that had been kicked out of the house, a dog that no one cared about. Reflecting on all the years, he realized that he thought he had status in the Ziegler family because of Zenith Corporation, but in reality, he was just a henpecked husband with no real standing. Then the humiliation and anger went away. Zenith suddenly became very happy, as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Ha ha, ha 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 ha. He threw his head back and laughed like a madman. The bodyguards fled, afraid that he would harm them. But dump! Zenith kneeled in front of Kieran. I want to live. Kieran was taken aback. Then he glanced at Helena's body. How could Zenith be so incredibly self-centered? That made him despise Zenith even more. At that moment, Zenith begged. Kieran, I'm willing to trade the secret records of Dragon's Mount for my life. Kieran was shocked. How could Zenith know about this book? Did the book come in a set? Do you not know about the secret records of Dragon's Mount? Zenith looked at Kieran with a questioning look. Kieran frowned and shook his head, pretending not to know. The York family's greatest secret is hidden inside, Zenith said. Kieran was dumbfounded. Chapter 119. A big secret about the York family? Kieran was reminded of the secret records of Dragon's Mount that Margaret gave him. His mother had given Margaret the book before her death, so the book was more important than life itself. Could there really be such a secret inside the book? Kieran was suddenly full of anticipation and eagerness. Zenith breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the change in Kieran's expression, feeling as if he had just dodged a bullet. Sir, why don't we talk inside? My madness was just an act to scare those people away so I could talk to you about this alone. His earlier performance was quite exaggerated, but it might or might not have been fake. Kieran stared at Zenith before following him inside. Zenith closed the door and looked at Kieran. "You think I'm heartless, don't you?" Kieran did not say a word. Unlike Zenith, he would never kneel and beg his enemy for mercy if his wife and child had been killed. As a man, he would rather die standing than live by kneeling. Zenith opened the safe and took out 2 pieces of paper. "I'm sure you'll understand after you see this, sir." Kieran took a look at it, and he was taken aback by what he saw. Suddenly, it all made sense to him. It was the paternity test result of Zenith and Barry. They were not related. Barry was not Zenith's son. Helena had cheated on Zenith. Zenith's plump face showed bitterness and rage as he said, "When I married Helena, everyone thought that I was climbing up the Ziegler family. But they did not know that I was a cuckold for the women of the Ziegler family." Kieran handed the 2 pieces of paper back to Zenith. "I'm not interested. I just want you to understand that I'm neither heartless nor selfish. It's just not worth it to die for people like that." Zenith paused for a moment before continuing. "Helena was unfaithful to me, and I watched her beat the woman I loved to death. She was pregnant at that time, but she had to get an abortion after that. I didn't have the guts to stop her. I can't even call myself human." Wham bam! Zenith slapped himself twice. Kieran raised his eyebrows. "You chose your own path. This has nothing to do with me, so just tell me about the secret records of Dragon's Mount." Zenith was even more pressured at the sight of Kieran's calm demeanor, so he took a deep breath. "It is said that once all the secret records of Dragon's Mount are found, the secret of Dragon's Mount will be revealed, so everyone wants to get their hands on it. 20 years ago, the York family found all 8 books, so they decided to exploit Dragon's Mouth, which led to a fatal disaster." Zenith paused to glance at Kieran. Kieran was taken aback and overwhelmed with emotion. Was this the reason behind the York family's annihilation? After pondering it, there must have been a reason why the Xander family had safeguarded Dragon's Mount for 20 years. However, he was not easily persuaded. "Did you think I would believe you just like that? Let alone forgive you?" Kieran looked at Zenith. Kieran's coldness made Zenith nervous. He shook his head and said, "Sir, I know that this secret alone is not enough for you to spare my life, but I know that this is not the only secret." Kieran did not speak and let Zenith continue. Zenith did not spill the secret right away, but he asked him a question instead. "Zenith Corporation is a publishing company. Even if the Ziegler family was looking for a cuckold for Helena, why do you think they would choose me?" "Why is that?" Kieran was stunned. Zenith was right. Countless people wanted to marry into the Ziegler family, but what made them choose Zenith? There are a total of 8 editions of the secret records of Dragon's Mount, and all 8 of them were printed by Zenith Corporation. There's only one real copy of each edition of the secret records of Dragon's Mount, and only the Fablemans know this, which is why the Ziegler family chose me. They wanted in on the secret. Chapter 120. Zenith's expression and tone were serious. Kieran was surprised when he heard his explanation, but he instantly grasped it, thinking it was reasonable. "The Fablemans know?" "If you agree to spare my life, I'll tell you," Zenith said to Kieran. "Do you think negotiating with me will work?" Kieran retorted. The light in Zenith's eyes dimmed instantly, and he once again lost hope. Finally, he nodded regretfully. "Fine, I deserve to die anyway." He looked at Kieran sorrowfully. In all 8 editions of the secret records of Dragon's Mount, the books ending with the number 7 could potentially be it, but to keep their promise, our ancestors never told us which. We were just told that the last digit was 7. Kieran's head ached. This information was practically useless. With so many books, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Zenith closed his eyes and waited for Kieran to decide his fate. "You can live!" Kieran turned around to leave. Zenith was momentarily stunned before his face showed joy. Then, he kneeled behind Kieran. "Thank you for sparing my life, sir. I don't want to see you in Bayville anymore," said Kieran while walking. "I'll go deal with the company and immediately leave Bayville," Zenith instantly promised. Kieran wanted to go home and see if his 2 books were numbered 7 as the last digit. Although Zenith deserved to die, he decided to let it go after he told him this information. Kieran drove back to Marina Breeze Court and went upstairs. Once he found the secret records of Dragon's Mount that poisoned Margaret and Marshall yesterday. He flipped to the print number at the back to see that it ended with a 7. Margaret gave him the number 7 book of the first edition. Mr. Simmons's book was No. 57 of the 5th edition. Kieran looked at the 2 books and was at a loss. There were so many books ending in 7. How could he find all of them? He was searching for a needle in a haystack. Sigh. Just then, he received a video call. Seeing that it was Snow, he accepted the call. What's the matter? On the other end, Snow was furious to hear Kieran's calm voice. She was just in a meeting, so her phone was silent. When she turned it on, she saw that Serena had sent her a voice message of Kieran and Rain's conversation. The flirtation in their voices made her thoughts run wild. Her first thought was that they were sleeping with each other. When she heard how calm and unafraid he was, she thought he would not treat her as his wife. Even if he wanted to divorce her, they were still legally married. Snow was almost going crazy, but she controlled her anger and asked, "Where are you?" "At home," Kieran responded without much thought. "You're at home?" Snow's voice was shrill, as if she was about to murder someone right now. "I'm at home. What's wrong?" Kieran sounded confused. "You..." The thought of Kieran doing those things with Rain in her house made her so angry she wanted to stab him twice. "Cheater. I want a divorce." Humiliated, Snow yelled at him and hung up. The dial tone rang on Kieran's end. He was already in a bad mood, but hearing what she said made him even more upset. He could not help but think, "Fine, I'm looking forward to the divorce anyway." Then he went downstairs and returned to Xander Corporation to get a divorce. As for the secret records of Dragon's Mount, he knew that it was not a matter that could be solved overnight. Just as Kieran was about to arrive at Xander Corporation's entrance, his phone rang again. Once again, it was Snow calling.